And we are recording. Good deal. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. As always, I'm Brian Kynes, the creator of the Tales of Ulran campaign setting. We use a variety of tabletop role-playing game systems, heavily homebrewed and entwined with our own, to play through this game. And these awesome folks that are joining me here on this Sunday afternoon are helping me to write this story one chapter at a time. Okay? We'll go ahead and go through introductions, and we're going to be jumping back into Plan B tonight. It's been about 3 or 4 weeks since we've got to them, and there's some real interesting stuff just around the corner for that group. And we had to take a little time to get through a hell of a thing in Plan A, which was really awesome. And now we get a chance to get this caught up a little bit as well. So let's go ahead and start with introductions with Colby up top here. Colby, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm Colby, and I will be playing Arson, who is a Draken monk, and who is starting to understand his past.
Well put, sir. Very good, man. Mr. McGuffey, please go ahead. You are muted, my friend. I'm
You're
sorry.
muted.
Be playing Finn. He is a elven arcane blade.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining in. Bella, please introduce yourself and your character.
I play as Hera, the dancer who is just very anxious right now.
Well put. Okay. And Mr. Keaton, go ahead, sir.
I'm playing the part of Rook, and I'm half the reason she's anxious.
There you go. Hey, he's not afraid of taking a little bit of blame for this. It's all good. Spiders, just a gift that keeps on giving. You know? Yeah. I mean, what are you going
I say the same thing in my game.
Really? That's awesome. All right. So, we usually jump on here about 6:30 and we bullshit and kind of get everybody caught up to speed. And now it's 7. So we've done some talking about some things and have everybody caught up to what we went through last time. For a quick recap, Azara is now getting ready to walk into the caravan as Hector has opened the door for her and reminded her that no matter what happens between the two of them or whatever is troubling her, she never has to ask permission to come home, which is very important. Also, on the other side of things, Finn, what is Finn's full name again, Danny? I can't remember, bud.
It is Finthier
Finthier.
Lithion, I can't pronounce it. Lithelon.
Okay, well, that's cool. That's awesome. It's almost French sounding, but the Lunesti elf, and he is Finthier. Okay, I keep forgetting. Finn is cool enough. It works, man. So, Finn had just talked with the other two, Arson and Rook, about his own personal investment in joining with the two of them. That he has had a chance to talk with Rainlore being the mysterious ranger, dark brooding type that we've encountered several times in the game so far. And the three of them have decided they are going to try to work together for mutual benefit to try to remedy a series of different things that seems to be bringing them together, or at least aligning them on the same kind of journey. And they were headed to the caravan in the hopes of talking to Azara and seeing if she would be interested in taking, offensive steps towards some of these issues that have been coming up since they've come into the city. So for tonight, we're going to start with Azara when she enters into the caravan. Okay? So, Bella, I'm just curious, what is the mindset? Because we know that you accidentally kind of revealed a bit of yourself more than you had planned to up at Leah's when you had that drink of the Kyren rum, which we decided was like Bacardi 151 with a kick. And it had a rough roll, but caused for some awesome role play at the end of the day. And going in here, knowing that you had taken a walk and you were trying to get some air, and we know that there were some issues. There's some things that you're seeing. There's some questions that are unanswered. And there were some questions that were answered. As you remember finding something in a chest inside of this actual caravan that you're going back into, and him being very defensive about this item. Showing you a side of Hector that you've never quite seen before. What is your mindset and what are you anticipating when you go in here? I'm curious to see where Azara's at right now.
So her mindset right now is guilt, in the sense of she does view her natural form as monstrous more than anything, which is why even when she's with her family, she is still hiding, because that quote unquote like blank form, like a baseline form of her, she views as not physically dangerous, but it's the reason why she perceives that her family is constantly having to run away from things. And the reason why she flipped out so much with Leah, even though Leah didn't have much of a reaction, was because in her mind, she just put her family at significant risk because she revealed a monstrous form out in the open. Like, probably more beating herself up for not being careful, especially on top of everything else that has gone down in the past. Like, they were just attacked.
It's
And
been
yeah.
an epic last 24 hours. You're right. You're damn right.
Yeah. They were literally all just attacked. And I think she's feeling that guilt of like, I should have been more on edge, more, why did I take the second to feel normal, to feel comfortable, to have a drink? Because of that, I am now endangering them even more. So she's guilty more than anything right now. And then to add like a little bit of like sprinkle on top, when like Raynor came and was talking to her and saying like, if I recall, he was saying like they need her, they need her help with something different, like to bring her on board. Um, Again, I think she views herself more as monstrous and burdensome. So then it's like why does anybody need my help? Like if anybody needs a hero, Hector's the hero. She's always thought of him as the hero type thing.
That's
So
cool.
it's kind of this like just she's anxious and guilty pretty much, and she's kind of running into, because the siblings are still up, so she can't hide right now, because if she goes to them, then she knows she needs to tell him that she may have just put them in even more danger than she thought she ever could.
You do hear that they are winding down in the caravan next door.
Mm-hmm.
That there is still some kind of gentle music being played, and you can recognize this as what Damien would be playing, as Daphne seems to be humming something in the background, and you smell different things coming from that hut or that caravan, as if there's some kind of incense burning or they're up to no good of some kind. But they are hanging out in the caravan just next door with dim lantern light glowing through the blinds that are pulled down over the windows of that as you go in. So that helps me kind of paint this and work on your perspectives, which is awesome. So thank you for sharing that. As Hector opens up the door, his eyes stay focused on yours because he wants to make sure that you feel safe. And as the door opens up, there's that moment of comfort. There's the smells. You can see the costumes, and you automatically look over that chest that's to the right-hand side, the chest that now you know not to mess with, possibly. And as you look across there, you also see some smoke formed inside here as well. And that's weird because Hector usually doesn't partake in anything of that nature. And as you scan through the room, in the very back corner, there is a table that seems to be made out of half of a barrel that's usually there, and you all would play different games and card games and things like that on there. And there's this kind of wraparound booth like bench seat that has torn leather pieces sewed down to it. It's a comfortable place. And in the back corner, there's somebody sitting there. And Hector looks at you, and he looks past you, and he whispers in your ear. He says, "It's okay. We need to talk about many things. It is safe. I promise you." And when he says that, you can see the shake to him, as if he's gritting his teeth when he says that, because he so desperately wants you to know that he means his words. Okay? Please come. He holds the door open for you. In the distance, a later-aged man, probably in his 60s, with a emerald green and black swirled colored cloak that seems to be made of fine material, embroidered with gold along the edges of it, stands up very elegantly and sits down a long pipe on the middle of the table into an ashtray that's been sitting there as one of the coasters of your all's drinks. This man has very long jet black hair with 2 gray stripes to go along the sides where his widow's peaks are. He has a band that wraps around his head made of fine silver and seems to have different emerald type colored gems that seem to adorn it. And this man is handsome. For an older man, there is something that is it catches you for just a moment. This man, just emits a charisma about him. The actor he would remind you of Azar would be Timothy Dalton. He played James Bond for a short while. He's also in that movie Beautician and the Beast. You know, he's been in a lot of different movies, but that's Timothy Dalton. And he has a long mustache and a short, very neat kept beard that is trimmed as if he's had someone do it for him. He is very well kept. And then he stands up and maneuvers and fastens his belt and twists himself around and steps from around the table and turns sideways and gives you a very elegant nod and says, "I've heard many things. Hector was kind enough to tell me about you, but not too much. I am Vander. I'm pleased to meet you."
I think she probably like curtsies / bows a little bit, not really talking, but does a little like polite type thing. And she is her, because I know, she does kind of bounce around between forms, and she was like a middle-aged woman to try to clandestinely get back, but before she knocked on Hector's door, she went back to Azhara.
Okay.
Human Azhara.
And the way we'll play that so I have some peace of mind is if you are someone else, please let me know before we get into a situation, because I can't tell.
Yeah.
Okay. So, with that, he kind of gives a very polite chuckle and nods. And he looks to Hector and looks at the seat, and Hector says, "You can sit there, it's fine." And he sits back down and picks up the pipe and holds it against his chest. And he just kind of looks at you for a long moment. He kind of looks you up and down. And you see that there are some cups there, and there are some things there that aren't yours, that seem to be brought from him. And he seems to have a bottle there that has some glasses kind of like a blue faded white kind of glasses that he's poured out, and he looks to Hector and looks at him, and Hector kind of goes, maybe a bit more, just a little bit more. Thank you. You're too kind. He goes, not at all. He goes, we've needed to have this meeting for some time, and I'm extraordinarily pleased that we're getting ready to have it, and we're all still safe enough to have it. And he says, and for you, could I interest you in a glass of wine?
I appreciate the offer, but I feel like I have had enough of spirits for the evening.
He gives you a clever look, and Hector and him share a look back and forth like, did we miss something? You know? And then he looks back to you and he says, very well. And he pulls the cup over and he refills a little bit for himself and he sits it back down. He takes another long toke off of the pipe and lets that smoke just kind of emanate from around his head a little bit, then takes a long, slow drink of that and looks at you. And he says, if I'm being honest, you've had one hell of a day. And he kind of smiles. And he goes, mind you, it could have been worse. So we should be glad that once again we're having this conversation.
Well, there was a development, but and then I think she's like kind of looking to Hector, like, do I talk openly here?
Hector
or
kind of looks at you and gives you a nod as he scratches his side and kind of like gives you a nod as if you could.
I had gone on my walk to clear my head, and there was a delightful woman who has a delightful restaurant, and I was hoping to get something nice to calm us down, I guess, or something to have a little bit of a treat. But I let my guard down too much, and I was offered a very strong whiskey, which was just a shot, but a version of me was revealed, and I left as soon as I can, but I don't know if anyone saw, and I don't know if, and
As
she
you're
trails off.
explaining that, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but sometimes actions happen at the same time words happen. But about 8 or 9 words from the end of that, Hector sees your struggle with it. And he walks over and puts his hand on your shoulder. Like, get it out. Go ahead. You're fine. And he's shaking his head with his eyes closed, as if to insinuate, you don't need to be so upset with yourself. Okay? And as that's happening, he says, these coincidences, and this is Hector, that we've been having here are not, they are not evented from anything that you, Azara, have done. They are a burden that I have carried for far too long. And it would seem that now there is no costume or mask that we may wear that can hide us from it any longer. It is an ironic twist of fate that you would talk to me of the danger that you have possibly put us in, when it is I that have put you in harm's way for so long. He goes, Azara, I know you probably don't believe this, but I tried my best. I truly did. bud of a beautiful blossom does not sit in the window sill and get the sun every once in a while, well, then it shrivels up and dies. And today, when I looked at you, I saw a petal fall. And that will be the last one I see. We are not going to any longer sit by in the shadows. I have grown tired of it. And I believe our guest has a solution. But it needs to be your decision this time. I've made my decisions. I've done wrongs. I've been selfish. And he kind of bites his lip a little bit. And I will no longer be at fault for anything that would badly happen to anyone in this family. That includes you, child. And Vander kind of looks up at him for a minute, and Hector kind of stands back to the side and leans against the door that you came in, and puts his foot up for a minute. He drinks a long drink of that wine, like a little longer than you would have expected. Is there anything you say at this moment?
I don't think so, because I think she's struggling to grasp what he means exactly. Like, I get what I as a player get what he's getting at, but I don't think Asara has any idea. And I don't think so.
Okay. With that, Vander puts the drink down and picks the pipe back up again. And he looks over at you and he says, it is fortunate that you have found yourselves within the confines of this city that I call home. There are places here that keep secrets safe, and people even safer. We're good at it, and we've done it for a long, long time. But I can only help you if you can help yourselves. And he looks across at Hector for a long time. And he goes, I believe Hector has spoken to you of a book that he possesses. When he says that, you know how when you're in a small area sometimes and your ears can kind of feel pressure as if the walls are closing in a little bit? I would like for you to roll an Arcana check.
Let's see. Arcana, you said?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I rolled a 12. And that's what? Intelligence? So that is 13.
Okay. He has invoked something in here. There's a feeling that you get. There's a pressure. There's a barrier. There's something in here now. You just don't know what it is, but you can tell that that's not like the pressure going through the mountains. And that's not something, this is a little different. There's something intent, especially in the moment that it happened that you felt it. Something has happened arcanic in here. Archaic. Okay? And as that happens, you look him over real quick with that moment, and you would see his hand almost like when you just almost catch a magician doing something sneaky in their card trick, you can see his hand kind of reach across from his pipe and settle back down on his leg as if you just missed something. Okay? And that's when as soon as he mentions the book. And he says, how familiar are you with the story of the Red Queen?
Is that something she would have known?
Well, have you ever heard about it since we've been playing?
I think more brief mentions, but
Okay, well, just be honest then.
yeah. So then, I don't believe I know the full story.
Okay. That makes sense. So, he looks over to Hector and he says, this might be better coming from you. Only you can understand your motivations for taking that item. And Hector nervously takes another drink. And he's scratching his top lip. And he goes over and he sits it down. He goes, I only wanted what I deserved. What was taken away from me. I would have never asked for any of this danger to have been involved in this. And he gets upset and defensive, and Vander stands up and he holds his hand and he goes, that's how the Anasi play their game. We've discussed this. This is Vander talking to Hector now. He goes, they find people that are desperate. And they use that against them. I could tell you tales all night long of people in even worse predicaments than your own that have fallen victim to an Anasi. Please continue. And now Vander kind of sits back and leans against a wall in between some costumes that are hanging on racks. And he says, Hector looks at you and he goes, I know I don't talk about it very much. You unfortunately kind of forced my hand earlier today when you saw the book. And it has been the cause of all of this. It has been my life, and it has also been my undoing. And he gets a bit choked up in this moment. It's very painful for him to talk about this. It's almost like a religious person talking about their lack of faith, is what it would remind you of in a way. And he goes over and he faces the chest that you have to assume has the book in it. And he points his finger down at it. And he points at it, and it's almost like he's getting ready to yell at it. And his hand shakes. And he looks back at you. And he says, there was a time when I thought I would never have any children. And I have been blessed with 3 wonderful, wonderful people to have in my life. And if it means that this all ends today, I would take it again. I would do it again. And he says that to Vander. Because some existence in this world is better than none. She would have wanted that. nods his head. And he says to you, Daphne and Damien. And he takes a step towards you, Azara, and he looks desperate. He goes, their lives are bound to the book. He looks at you to see if maybe you're starting to get a twinkling of understanding. He says, without it, they would cease to exist. We were desperate. And he kind of looks away and he talks over his shoulder at you for just a moment. Okay? And he says, my love and I were never to have children. There was an accident. And she could not bear a child. And this created a deep sadness within her, as she had many sisters and brothers of her own. As did I back home, when we could still go there, and it was safe. And then one day, I met someone that told me that they could give us the family that we had always wanted. But for a cost. Everything must cost something, Azala, in this world. And ours was our freedom. Long before you ever saw the light of day, we made a deal with the owner of this book, the Red Queen. In exchange for my beloved to be able to bear children, we would help her. He looks at you and goes, I'm sorry. Vander says, Hector, please continue. He goes, of course. We tried to do right with you, Azarla. You see, the Red Queen is not who she says she is. She is not like you and I or anyone. She's an ancient being. Someone forgotten. When the great cleansing of the world came, she was lost in the cracks, crawling around as a spider would, looking insignificant and waiting for her moment to prey upon those that have dreams and ambitions. People like me and my love. And so she became pregnant. Twins. I was so happy. There was nothing more that I wanted. My life didn't matter any longer. And so we took our performances and our abilities and we left home with your brother and sister. And we began to travel. We played many shows, and at first we didn't know what or why we were putting on these performances. We would go into cities and the Red Queen would tell us stories and tales of the local areas that we'd went to. As if she knew these people. As if she knew the minds and the wishes and the desires of the people everywhere we went, just as she had known our desire to have children. And it wasn't too long after so many cities that we found out that we were aiding her in luring in other people into her web. And by that time it was too late. I know one day you'll have children of your own, Azara, until you look into their eyes and see what looks back at you, the hope and the possibility. I hope then it is that you can forgive me for what I've done to many others. He kind of hangs his head down. When we found you, we thought you were dead. I will not get into the details of exactly how this came to be, but let me just go as far as to say you were not alone. And those people took their last breaths to make sure that you would survive long enough to be found. You were indeed special before we ever had to tell you you were. And he smiles real big. And he says, and we weren't going to do this any longer. Not for Daphne, not for Damien, and most certainly not for you, as the way the Red Queen looked at you, Azara. It was like a predator looking over helpless prey. You were going to add something extra. Something diabolical. Something even beyond what me and my love could be a part of. So one night, we decided to take you, and we took the book. As I know that if we fled with you, she would erase Damien and Daphne from existence.
Why would you risk them for a creature?
Explain. Say that again.
She said, why would you risk them, meaning Daphne and Damien, for a creature?
He looks at you and he takes a step over and he places his hand up along the side of your face. And you know the feel of that. He's done it since you were little. And he moves the hair out of your eyes. And he says to you, "Is that a creature? Salvation knows many faces, Azara. We are who we need to be. Have you forgotten everything we've practiced? You're the best actor or actress amongst us, and you know it, and you have been for some time. It does not matter what costume you wear." And he points at your chest, about your collarbones. He points like that. And he says, "You are Azala in any skin. You are no creature. Stop doing yourself this disservice by even saying those words." At this point, Vander speaks up from the background. And he speaks up and he clears his throat. And he says, "You realize that you are not the first Dar Iblin that I have encountered." And he looks at you and he nods. He goes, "That's right. You are not alone in this city."
Question. Would she even know what a Darieblin is?
No, probably not. Roll a history check of disadvantage. That's a very interesting point, because Hector's never really told you. So this is going to be, okay, so this is going to be like, I want you to think about this as when you find out that you're adopted, this is you possibly looking into who your real parents were. This is kind of like, it's kind of like the D&D version of that, right? Where maybe in all these years, you know, you've just been like, dude, what has white hair, dark skin, and fucking horns? You know, what have you done? So roll your check and tell me what you get.
You said disadvantage?
Let's just go, I mean, if you don't think you ever would as a character have researched it, disadvantage. If you think you would have been curious and you would have pulled on that thread in all your years, roll it normal.
I think disadvantage because
Okay.
I think probably the minute she felt she found safety,
Yeah.
she would have just been trying to camouflage in that safety as much as possible, so staying looking human as much as possible.
Right.
And then, like, the only things that remotely had qualities, like she did, horns and different stuff like that, were monsters that maybe she
Correct.
saw in travel. I think she's literally only thought of herself as monstrous.
That's very interesting.
And with a disadvantage, I rolled a 5. Plus 1, so a 6. So yeah, no, I don't think would know.
At that moment, he looks at you, and Vander picks up on that because his eyes are very full of knowledge and wisdom. And when he sees this,
I
he
love
kind of
that.
looks and he says, "You don't know."
I love the fact that he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna drop this truth bomb, and she's gonna get so much comfort
Yeah.
with this,"
Yeah.
and then nothing.
Yeah. And then he looks over to Hector. She has no idea of who she is. Truly. And Hector goes, "She is Azala. That is all that matters in this family." In that moment, he says, Vander says, "If I might elaborate." And he looks at you. He goes, "Do you want to know? Azara, do you want to know what you are?"
What else could I possibly be?
You were born into the image of one of the oldest beings known to have ever existed. And there are hundreds of thousands of you. And they are very different than you and I. They live under the world. And he goes, "When you were brought here," and he looks at him for a minute. He looks over at Hector and he looks at you and he kind of takes a deep breath. And he goes, "There are only a few reasons why I Dar Iblin, which is what you are, child, come to the surface. One is to be cast away, which is not the fault of a little girl. And one is for war. Times have changed. Ages have went on. The world grows wiser and more tolerant. But for ages, that was the truth. And then he kind of smiles pleasantly just a little bit, and he looks at you, and you can see his eyes squint a little bit. Things like you occur. And you are not alone. There is another that lives in the city. Although she would never reveal herself, you and her seem to have quite a few things in common. She has given me permission to tell you her name. Her name is Lydia. And she is a Dar Iblin that lives amongst us in this city as well. And she has a sister named Oriantha that also lives in the city. People are not based on their race, as you have clearly demonstrated. We are the product of our environments. If a Dar Iblin can smile and dance and entertain others, there is hope for anybody. You are no creature, young lady. You are you share the blood of one of the oldest races of all of Ulran.
Ancient beings or descendants of such that live beneath the earth, that seems like
A fairy tale?
somewhat. And in her head, she's fully picturing, like, when you say, like, descendants of ancient beings that live under the earth, she's picturing, like, do you know, like, the Falmer in Skyrim?
Absolutely. Are you fucking joking?
Yeah.
I'm a game crafter in my 40s. I know Skyrim, okay? I know Skyrim. Yeah.
That's what she is, like, picturing.
Okay. Yeah, that's frightening. I get it. Okay.
If you know Skyrim, Brian, what
Yeah.
happened? What happened to the Dwemer? Still trying to figure that out.
I still hate the fact that let's not even get into that. Let's not even get into that. Oh, Jesus. Oh, anyway, there's so many, boy, I could get on a tangent about that shit, Keaton. I really could. Anyway, the machines look like dwarves, but they're not. God damn it. Ah! Anyway, so with that, he looks over to Hector again and he stands up. And Vander says to you, he goes, "Sometime come by my shop. I have quite a collection of the history of the world. And maybe you could do with a little bit of literary guidance. It would be my pleasure to show you. And when you're ready, I could introduce you to people that actually spent time in that realm. There is no true good or evil, Azara. Just perspectives and motives. The Daryublin, the humans, the Valdros, and the Illuvians. It is the same for all of them. And it would seem that you have made wise decisions thus far in your life. Don't change who you are. He nods. He looks over to Hector. And he says, "So it is agreed. You will let us protect the book and ensure the longevity of your children. In return for working with Rainlore and the Darkwood Huntsmen of Hamilsbiar." Hector says, "Yes, we will postpone our show, Azara, for just a while until we get some things figured out. You understand?"
Yes. I think she's still maybe at a little bit of a loss for words, still trying to wrap her head around everything, but she's like, yeah, so while you join this huntsman, I guess myself, Daphne, and Damien will look after the caravan, or I think, like, in her head she's like planning like more the domestic side of, like, I guess I'll
Right.
like organize the cabinets and
Yes. He says, Vander says, or you could help us set right something that's been done poorly for countless ages. He looks over and he goes, "I do not need to make it more clear that the time of hiding is over."
I am not sure how much use I will be. I dance. That's the extent. I'm no fighter.
He smiles. And he goes, and Vander kind of stands up again. He goes, I'm not much of a fighter either, child. He goes, but there are other ways. Other ways to set things right. You are good people. You don't need me to tell you that. Every night when you go to sleep and you lay your head down, you do not dream of harming others. And he goes, I can tell it when I look at you. And there are those that think about it constantly, every single day of their lives. What can this world give them? What can they take from it? Even when everything they've taken is enough for 1,000 people. There's a lot you can do. You just have to look and find ways. For true corruption is a very narrow-minded endeavor. There are always ways to undo things. And he nods, and he says, Rainlore and the others will be by to collect the book. And then they will take you into their care. We will talk about steps forward into remedying this and freeing you of this burden, Hector. You have my word and the thanks of the Scholars of Dawn. As this book should have been closed ages ago. And Hector nervously looks at you and looks over, and he walks over to the chest. And he looks over to Vander one last time. And he says, as long as I know that my children will be safe, I will do this. And whatever you need. I'm tired of running. And even though I've tried to give a life to them, this is not the life they deserve. Vander nods. And he says, please take the wine as a gift. And he stands out and he stokes out the flame inside of the pipe with his thumb. As you would swear that would have smarted to a normal person. But for some odd reason, he just snuffed that cherry out like it was nothing. And he puts a cap back onto the pipe that was folded up in as part of the actual contraption and tucks it into one of the interior pockets of his long green and gold cloak. And he turns and he opens up the door. And as he does, you see past him Finn leading Rook and Arson, much taller, heading up that direction as if they were just getting ready to start eavesdropping. Okay.
I love so mentally, like, I knew that these three were like on their way, but like in my head I'm like, oh, maybe like they'll have a moment type thing, because otherwise it's like this intense discussion and almost like a knock of like, hey, can Azara come out and play?
Yeah, that's it. It's like, we'll have her back by dark, man. We're just gonna play some hide and seek down my grandma's. It's gonna be fine.
Just opens the door and the three of us just
Yeah, like Three Stooges just falling. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to give you a break there. I'm done beating up on your character for a little bit, and we're going to talk to the other three here as they were headed that direction. Okay? A lot of very good stuff there. I hope you took a few notes when we was giving it to you. And if not, Bella, I've got a bunch of stuff written down that I can send you to, okay? Lots of information there. And food for thought. Okay. So, as the three of you have decided that you are going to make your way to Azara, I want you three to briefly have a discussion for us. Okay? In character. So I want to remind you of the subject matter, and I want to hear you three kind of work out your sales pitch to Azara before you get there. Now, and it's kind of hard to piece this together because there's a lot of different, like I say, it's complex, right? So we know that Rook and Arson are uniquely gifted in the ability to be able to traverse in and out of the Netherfall. Even though they can't always control how this happens, they can actually walk between those two realms, which is something that it seems that the Darkwood Stalkers can do with very limited access. And it's very difficult for them, as they were in the fight with this Red Queen and these spiders that attacked as the gift that Rook brought ended up being not such a nice gift. So there's a part of motivation for him. Keep in mind, retribution. Number two, if there's a group of people trying to unravel the folks that were behind sending that, Rook would possibly be on board to remedy that. So these are motivations I want to remind you of. Okay? Also, Arson, you recall in your flashbacks when you were being brought out of Thornwood that you were with Rainlore. That he was one of the people that was there as you were being saved and rescued from that area. Also, you remember this fair, red-headed elven maiden that seemed like to be some kind of red-haired druid of some kind that was actually doing things to ease your pain in those flashbacks and memories of things of that nature. Okay? So you have some people to thank or aid or something. Someone took you up there to Tanima so you could start the healing process, and you need to find out exactly who those people are, correct? That's kind of your thing now. And Danny and I have already discussed Finn's involvement in this, and his is more of a secretive thing between him and Rainlore and those folks. But Danny, you have your own very, very awesome motivations. So I'm curious how this conversation goes about. Okay? So I want you, the three of you, to kind of have a discussion as you're heading up to here about what you want to say to Azara in light of everything that's happened. Okay? And how you want to let her know if you think she's important enough to be a part of this. If you think that why she would have a part to play in it. Things of that nature. If you guys can have a conversation, I am ready to listen to you all.
I'm telling you right now, I'm the last person that needs to ask her to go with us. I just brought spiders to her house. She's not going to listen to me.
Okay. Anyone else?
I do have training in being an ambassador, or at least an ambassador's escort. I'll lay it down, but how are we going to convince her?
Oh, I'm sure she'll have questions of her own of what has been going on, because me and Rook for sure have questions about it.
Okay.
I don't know. The way that she likes to run away, I don't know what to think of her yet.
Well,
Given what's happened, if she happens to be with us the way she likes to change faces, if I ever come across Sircon again, her disguises could come in handy.
Wait, does he know about that specifically?
About Sircon?
No, about her changing the faces type thing. Because
I
I
thought you
think
saw her change at one point.
You caught her you did see her change into the old man that time when you caught on to what she was doing. When it
no,
was
she
up
ran
there-
away. I think. Like that was a thing of like you knew something was up with the old man, but I'm not sure if it was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, she swapped over in the alleyway real quick and then took off. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, Rook
Hey,
hasn't
welcome to my world, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, Rook wouldn't know anything about that. So
So retract the
John.
last statement.
That's good stuff. It's good stuff.
She
Who is Sir
hides.
Khan?
given that Sircon handed me that to bring to her family specifically, perhaps she might have something to say about that.
So Sir Khan is the one that brought this box into the city that we're being blamed for. And we still must meet with
I picked up the box
guard.
from Sircon on a previous delivery. It was not here.
And is this a normal person you work for?
It's just somebody I picked up a contract with. He offered me quite the sum of money. Now that I think about it,
well,
I believe
he
he
is
only gave
assigned
me
to-
half. I don't think he expected me to live through that encounter to collect.
That's
He
bad
did.
for business.
Go ahead, Danny. I'm sorry.
That is definitely bad for business.
Well, he hasn't seen bad for business yet. Him and that damn bounty hunter.
Bounty hunter.
Big, ugly, loud. Can't miss him. Wears everything as a trophy.
At that moment, you guys hear something, all three at the same time, and you catch a gleam of reflected light from alongside of one of the buildings on your way here. And you hear this sound, and I will only describe it as the chinging of a coin. Okay? And as you look over, you would see a short figure hidden in the darkness in between a couple buildings, flipping a large silver and gold colored coin on their thumb. Okay? And as they flip it a few times, and it kind of breaks the silence over everything, this voice cracks out. And this voice is kind of sly and has a certain tone to it. I believe you've met this person before, Jeremy. This is Dorbach. Okay, so you would recognize the voice. And from, hey, what's up, kiddo? And the voice says, so you guys have decided you're going to include her. You're going to get the whole band together.
It's only fair that she gets a little piece of the vengeance I'm about to bring down. The offense was against her family, after all.
He goes, I appreciate your gumption. He goes, those are strong words, and I hope your words are as strong as sharp as your daggers are, because you're going to need it. And he looks over and he says, and you've been pretty quiet so far, haven't you? And he's looking at you, Arson. And he takes that Demirian coin and he holds it up, and you recognize it as the same kind of coin that was given you in half payment, Rook. And he says, that's Demirian. He goes, before you go and involve her, understand first off, you're not pulling any punches or doing anyone any favors, because her old man involved her in this a long time ago. All you're doing is trying to educate her. And I would say probably about right now, and he looks up at the sky, he goes, she's probably getting a pretty decent education. Don't worry, it's a good guy. Not like me. And he kind of grins and he looks over at Finn. He goes, the trick here is there's different levels of what's going on. I think you guys need to be brought up to speed a little bit on things. I can tell you're a guy that kind of likes to cut through the bullshit. Am I right? He's talking to you, Finn.
Well, when you've lived long enough, you tend to get bored with the chit chat.
I agree. And let's hope we can all live long enough to be bored with something other than this. Am I right?
One does get attached to life after a while.
He grins and chuckles. And he goes, first off, I want to go ahead and say right up front that this fucking conversation never happened. Can we agree on that, gentlemen?
Who are you again?
He smiles. And he looks at you. And he goes, you can call me the Spider.
No, I understood who you, never mind.
He looks at you and smiles and he
Sarcasm
goes,
is not your strong point.
he goes, humor's not yours. Right? And as you say that, because he didn't think you'd be clever enough to or that outgoing to say something like it. You're kind of this large hulking kind of, he didn't expect that out of you, Jeremy. So that was awesome how that played out. That's nice.
I deal with secret contracts on a regular. Of course, that's what I do.
So he says, I have a lot of pull around here in this city, and I've worked real hard to have it. And he goes, and I've done things that your lordship, King Omadon, doesn't even know. Things that would keep him up at night. Things that would make you question how good a person I really am. But I don't think get lost in all that sappy shit. I focus on results. He looks over and he wipes off some of his shoulder like that, and he pulls on that pointed little beard he has, and the results are this. We have a flourishing underground created by yours truly that runs through this city. We get into stuff. A little bit of trading. A little bit of bounty hunting. A little bit of exchange of this and that. But the point is, none of that kind of stuff happens in this city unless your truly knows about it. He goes, and then all of a sudden I get this contract. Biggest fucking contract you've ever seen. Demirian coin.
You've got my attention.
As they found my attention. Nothing that large happens in this city. Nobody brings that much coin into here, especially that much making me look like an amateur. I'll not fucking have it. That contract's been here for over a year, just waiting. And then, lo and behold, Cirque Mystique comes wheeling into our city. With 3 Demirians, or 4 Demirians, in tow, the exact description. And I would go through the details of what it said needed to be done, but it wasn't pleasant. And as soon as they came in here, I knew I had to get involved. So I talked to a gentleman named Vander. If you've never met him and you want a good book or you need a magical item, he's the place to go in town. Vander's got a lot of pull, and he's kind of what I like to call one of my intermediaries. He doesn't get too dirty, but he's not real squeamish about the shit we have to pull either. It turns out this contract was looking for something real powerful. Something that those folks have that I don't even think your friend even knows about. Someone willing to wipe a whole family off the face of the earth and pay someone a fortune to do it.
Sounds like common politics.
It could, if I let it get that far. That's where you all come in.
Common politics like that typically only occur amongst royalty and important people.
Yep.
Baffles me why they would target a simple circus crew.
Well, once again, when the profit is large, like a kingdom or whatnot.
He goes, in this
That's
contract
wise.
that I've got, gentlemen, he goes, this wasn't something that was just given to anyone. I had to pay people off to not do this. I'm not asking for a debt to be paid, but I'll put it like this to be very frank. None of your friends would be alive right now had it not come from my pocket to stop the assassination the second their wheels breached the front gates of New Gemdar. The last 24 hours, if you felt like someone was looking at you over your shoulder because you were near them, you were not wrong.
And he says that insight check.
Please do.
It's new character sheet. Got to look over everything.
Right on, man. Got to do it. Yeah, I get it.
Okay. It's like a 15.
29. When you see this, there is this, you almost want to think that there's like this break of confidence. So you're looking to see if this is just him trying to bluff or if he's the real deal. And the second you start trying to look for a tell on him, Finn, he almost looks at you and throws off a smirk that you think maybe only you saw, directed at you. Almost like, and I'm going to make this sound archaic in a way that Finn will understand. Okay? It is almost like his regular conversation was going on. And the second that you looked at him and tried to size him up, somehow, it almost seems supernatural, Finn. He looks over at you and gives you kind of like a half wink. And doesn't even miss a beat on telling his story. It is a very, very strange tell, and you can't make anything of it. But you know that in that moment that you were just kind of, you may have situated yourself a little bit. You're like thinking to yourself for the next 3 or 4 seconds, did I give him a tell by trying to look for his? You know what I mean? Your mind kind of goes through that for a minute, and then it straightens itself out because you didn't have a bad roll. You didn't have below a 10. You had a good roll. But these are very odd results. You've never had anything quite like this happen. Okay? Roll a charisma check. I want to see how if that flusters you or shows you show your tell.
Nat 20 on that.
That's really good, but I need to know the number because this is Thorbach.
Well, not proficient in charisma, so that would be a 23.
Okay. Okay. The next line he says addresses it directly. You make of that whatever you will, Finn. Okay? He goes, make no mistake. The time for telling lies to one another is over for right now. Right now, we need to talk about how we're going to get results and get this under control. So right about now, he says, my buddy Vander is in there explaining to them that he wants to help them with a little issue they have. Kind of take the bullseye or the target off their back, so to speak. You get what I'm saying? He wants to give them a little bit of relief. And the reason being is because he knows with me in charge of that kind of shit in this city, it still runs right. And people don't need to worry about locking their doors when they go to bed. Sure, we do our stuff, but we're not a bunch of mindless killers. And he says it kind of sarcastically. He goes, we're just here to do the things that sometimes people don't want to talk about. And make some money while we're doing it.
I can sympathize.
What's that?
I can sympathize.
Okay, he looks at you and he goes, I'm starting to understand that you could. He goes, and I can tell that you had no idea what you had when you brought it in here, did you?
Not a clue.
He goes, there's something that fucking bugs me about that. Neither did I. And he points at you and he goes, and I know everything. He is very, very serious right now. Okay? And I didn't see that one coming. So I wanted to have a conversation with you. The three of you, man to man. He says, Vander's going to try to keep this balance. He doesn't want that kind of blindsided corruption coming into the city. He also knows that the Darkwood Stalkers of Hamilsbiar, the Darkwood Huntsmen of Hamilsbiar, rather, could use your unique talents. A tit for tat, so to speak. He goes, if you want to get behind what's going on with this, if you want to find out who ordered that box and who this red-robed maiden is, and that freaks you out because he knows that shit. He's obviously had conversations with people, right?
Fend know about the Red Robe Maiden. Have you guys discussed that?
You did not see that, and at this point, maybe you'd be looking for answers, and Jeremy and Arson can tell you about that if you want to after this, okay? He says, helping the Darkwood Huntsman is your first step in figuring that out. He holds up a short hand with all kinds of rings on it that has the fingers cut out with a leather palmed glove that has an image of a spider embroidered on it. It looks like it's made out of some kind of like mole fur. Okay? He says, you've got a lot of things going for you here. He says, you've got our interest in making sure that the people that brought this Demarian coin into the city never get a foothold on this place. He looks at you and he says, you have redemption for being made a sucker of. And he's looking at you, Rook. And he says, and that may hurt. And he goes, but I was fooled as well, and I don't like it.
To hell with redemption, I want vengeance.
What gets it done? What gets it done? He looks over at Arson. He says, and you've got a score to settle. Those people brought you here, and I still don't know why. He goes, because there's no money to be made in that answer for me. He goes, sorry. Some things I just don't give a shit about. He goes, but you might. And he goes, and if it wasn't for those people, for the Darkwood Huntsmen, you'd be still lost down there in Thornwood chasing shadows. That I do know. And he looks over at you, and he gives you another long look, Finn. And he goes, and I gotta tell you something. You have a little bit of my respect, young man. He says, because you're the only one they really won't talk about. So whatever you have to offer them or whatever they're gaining from you, it seems like their goals should be your goals. And finding out who sent that package here is a priority. You probably need to get the dancer in on it. Because there's nothing harder to hit, easier to hit than a sitting target. Need to be one that moves around. It's time to start thinking offensively.
He would smile and say, well, it's not that they're keeping secrets. It's just I'm a simple elven ambassador.
Well, life's about to get complicated. And he smiles and he looks at you and he's looking to see if you're grinning at that. Are you like you are, Danny? Is he grinning?
No.
Okay. He goes,
Arcane blades are very good at keeping a low profile of what they do until they have to do other things.
He goes, I hope so. Anyway. I'll see you again, and if you need to speak with me, You want to go to the Drunken Mug, and you want to talk to someone that I think maybe you've already met, Roselia. Which you do remember her. She's the one that Finn and you and Arson was dealing with, that was drinking the good-looking, Spanish-looking chick that was out there at that fountain. That's her. He goes, if you need to speak with me, contact her and I'll let you know when and where. I want to know how this is going, and I will make it worth your while. As that Demarian coin that was put in the possession of the city still remains. It's worth it to me to not lose my position here. And if you plan on being here for any amount of time, you'll be glad it's me and not someone else. Are we agreed?
Sounds fair.
It's very fair. He turns around to walk off, and he stops for just a minute. He says, oh yeah, one last thing. He says, try to decide how this. I gotta be real careful with this. I'm trying to think who you've seen, who you've talked to so far. If your pursuit of this takes you on an airborne adventure, take my advice and steer clear of the Dreadnought. That ship's got a mark on it. And he walks off. Okay? That's worth noting. Okay? Does anyone have anything you want to say to him before we end that scene and move on?
Before you leave, Spider.
He stops. As he's starting to pull a cane out from his vestment, and you can hear it tap onto the stone. As he turns and looks over his shoulder, you can see the long nose and the bushy eyebrows, kind of the silhouette of him. He has some big-ass freaking eyebrows, like some Eugene Levy kind of things. What is it you're saying?
I don't want to wrong you, so I need to ask. There's a big, ugly bugbear who's going around collecting bounties. He tried to go after a dancer earlier today. You didn't know if that's one of your men before I put an end to it.
He smiles. And he says, typically don't deal with those creatures. You'd probably be doing the city a favor if you were to rid us of that monster.
Fair enough. Consider it done.
Good luck. He says that sarcastically, because he's hitting to the point that he has an idea, and I will make sure I'm not just talking out my ass. Hold on. Well, fuck yeah. Okay, with a 19, sure. Absolutely. He knows that's no baby. That's a big boy. Okay. So with that, the door opens up to Hector and Azara's caravan. As you can hear the music of some kind of harp-like instrument being played from the caravan next door. You can smell the aroma of what almost smells like you're in a head shop of a very spiced kind of smoke that seems to linger around these caravan. And as the door opens up, Finn, you see Vander exiting. He stops and he looks in surprise for just a moment, and he looks at you and gives you, Finn, a knowing nod. Okay? He goes, it would appear that the wheels have begun to turn earlier than I had planned. Trouble sleeping? And he looks at all three of you before he leaves the doorway.
I always find a moonlight stroll pleasant.
As you do. This will be reassuring. He steps down off the steps and he walks into the cluster of the three of you. And he says, he looks over at you for a long moment, Finn. He goes, Rainlord and another will be by shortly to collect an artifact. I feel better that the three of you are here until that time comes. The rest of that business is not mine to discuss with you. He looks over his shoulder and he looks in the doorway and he looks at Azara for a minute. And he looks back over to three of you. And he says, it's funny how fate works. And it would seem that the four of you are intertwined now in this. I wish you well. And he goes to walk past and through and walks down the street, silently, as Hector stands there holding the door open and looks at you all for a moment. And Hector's eyes look tired, guys. This guy's been through something. Okay? You saw him being playful earlier, you saw him being enchanting and entertaining, and then you saw him during that fight, Rook and Arson, you saw him do some things when time was slowed that makes you have the feeling that he is a formidable opponent in a secretive type of way. You saw him drawing the saber from sand, you saw him doing some different things that the rest of the group just didn't witness. And he looks at the two of you with that bit of recognition and gives you a nod. But you can tell he has weak eyes. He has had watery eyes within the last 15 minutes. For sure. Okay? It is the three of you standing at the bottom of the steps. Hector is holding the door open, and Azara, you are wherever you want to be. Now, we can do a couple things here. We can go ahead and take our first break. And you all can think about how this interaction needs to go down, which is advised. Or we can push forward just a little bit, go ahead and do that now, and then take a break afterwards. How do you guys want to do it?
Whatever.
Okay. So, because everyone is so overwhelming to jump and say something, I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to break now. So let me go ahead and get ready to pause this. Good stuff so far. And here's the thing. It's a lot, and I knew this episode would be like this. This is all from your all's just awesome backstories and getting on the same page of this kind of shit. This is going to be neat. This is going to be neat however this works out. So good luck to all of you. And I'm getting ready to pause this, and we'll be back in just a few moments. Okay, are we recording here? Did I get it? Pause recording. Yeah, okay, I think we are. Yeah, we're recording. Good deal. Sometimes the buttons don't give me all the information that my mind needs to be set at ease, but I think we're good. So, now, the stage is yours for a minute. This is where, as a DM, I get to sit back and chill out and watch the role play unfold. It's laid out. Everyone's tired. I've explained to you what Hector looks like. I've explained that Azara is looking throughout the door onto you all. You're at the bottom of the steps. Vander has walked off. You've all had interesting conversations that kind of bring you to this moment. If you need clarity on anything, ask me, because it's all coming pretty obvious. But some of this can be a little bit complicated as far as what personally ties us into this, what kind of convictions we all have, why we're getting together as a group. Like I say, this isn't like the four of you start in a tavern and you go on an adventure for no reason whatsoever. We're building here. So, with all that being said, Azara, you look out and you see the three of them have this moment with Vander. I would start with you because why not? Do you have anything you want to say to them as they are? Vander walks off, and now they all kind of look up in your direction to the caravan.
Is first of all, hello, you three. And then I think she looks off in the direction that Vander went, and is kind of like, "Are you all friends of his?"
Never met him.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Never met him.
I've just arrived in the city. I have been in his shop.
Okay. And in full transparency, I don't think she's fully making I'm not sure she's fully making the connection of like these three, and I think she's kind of like, why did they come back to like?
Right.
Are they wondering about the show type thing?
Yeah. So you guys see that she needs to know why you're here.
Yeah, we got tickets, but there was not really a show.
Yeah, that's not Rook saying that at all.
Azara?
Rook got more of a show out of that than he ever bargained for.
Fuck yeah.
We've come to ask your help in a matter.
That seems to strangely be a common theme tonight of people. Because in her head she's thinking of Rainlore and the guy who just left, and now these three
Mm-hmm.
of kind of like uh help in what exactly?
Well, it mostly affects you, but we all have our own reasons for being involved. But we're going to be doing some things for the Darkwood Stalkers.
That's her click moment. The minute you say it, that's the exact thing that the other guy had said, right?
Uh-huh.
That group.
And that's who's going to be protecting Hector and your brother and sister when he decides to tell them tomorrow, and trying to help them survive this until they can find out what the hell's going on. In exchange, and they're gaining that trust and that protection because Hector has offered to relinquish his grasp on this artifact and put it in the right hands so it can be taken by Vander. He has told you that someone's going to be coming after a while to get it. So in exchange for that, the Darkwood Stalkers and Vander are more than happy to protect them. And it's they're kind of like in the witness protection now in a way. In the Ulran version of that is how you would kind of feel about it at this point.
Well, yes, I have become newly familiar with that group, and I intend to help them as well. So I see we have a common goal. Though, as a warning type thing, I am not going to be leaving until an artifact of ours is properly handed off. And that's pretty much saying of like when Rainlore shows up to take the book, she's good to go.
I get it. So you understand this. Danny, Rainlore would have made mention that they were going to try and negotiate about that, but he didn't. You haven't talked to him to know what the result is. Her saying that would give Finn a little bit of a sigh of relief, knowing that those negotiations have went well.
Well, and before that, we all have a meeting with the guard in a few hours.
Now, it's like 3 a.m. It's super late, but yours wouldn't be until like 9 or 10 o'clock tomorrow. So you have quite a while for that, Finn.
Okay. How much do you want to sleep on this and start in the morning, or or are we looking to leave as soon as we hand this artifact off? And we've kind of got to contact these people and maybe find out exactly what they want.
Anyone have a suggestion? You've been kind of quiet up there, Arson. Do you want to get some rest, or you want to hang out here and make sure that this transaction goes okay, and then crash until tomorrow? What's you guys' thoughts?
You would being through all that stuff he's been through, like that fight and what he went through up in the temple, he would definitely want to rest.
Okay.
I think perhaps that while we wait, as we don't know when they will arrive, I will alternate with shifts, I imagine, with my family, and you are welcome to stay local, but not come into the caravan, and perhaps a rest is in order. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, long rest.
Yeah, I get you. Rook, anything to say to that?
If you'd allow, I'd gladly take part in the watch. It was my fault that this happened to begin with anyway.
It all requires sleep, so I will also take a watch.
Okay. So, here's the situation. I'll try to make this easy on you all. Okay. Okay, it's currently 42 degrees outside. Okay. Which is not freezing, but it's not, comfortable either. Okay. So, if you all are choosing to wait there until after this thing is gone, that's fine. You'll be outside, and we're not going to have any kind of ill consequences for that. But you would be ill-advised to just sleep outside in this kind of weather.
I think Azhara may offer to, or may make a campfire for them type thing, after like ushering to make sure that her father probably is kind of like, father, go rest up. And then once he's like set it aside, just be like, all right, let me get you guys a campfire.
Okay.
Like going over to your friend's house and they forget you to give you a blanket, so you're just covering up whatever you can get hold
Been there.
of.
My buddy Dan Rain's house. My God, we used to all crash there on the weekends, and that was terrible. He had no heat upstairs in his house.
I have slept under couch cushions before.
Long nights, buddy. Long nights. So with that, everyone kind of decides. I'm going to say, just to kind of help out, that Arson, there's a little bit of a front porch on these caravans, a little area that's kind of covered with banisters and a railing before you would step off. These caravans are a decent size. They're almost the size of like a train car. They're good size of wheels on them. And I would say you would post up there and kind of sit down against the outside. With that, Hector would come out and cover you up with a blanket and offer you a pillow that smells a lot like the fragrant smoke that's rolling all around this place, and offer it to you, and you would kind of slump up in the corner of the front. Finn, of course, would be wide awake because of the race and things that he is, and you would get out there and kind of watch up at the moon and look at the weather and how things are going and wait this out. Rook, you as well might kind of walk about and see that for just a moment. Roll a perception check for me. Yeah, I'll do this.
17.
Okay. With 17, you notice that the blinds on the caravan next door, the one that you have to assume Daphne and Damien are in, one of them seems to be open as the lantern is out, and you catch the eyes of Daphne looking out at you. As the blinds close, you can hear muffled words in a conversation. As shortly after that, Daphne steps outside, looking somewhat upset but she takes a deep breath and closes her eyes. And she's wrapped in gypsy like garments and stuff, and has a hood pulled over her head. And she steps out onto the steps, and the brother is in the distance and looks out and looks humble to a degree and looks over to you and looks at Finn and gives a nod and goes back in and shuts the door. And she comes out and she goes up to you, Azara, and she says, "Let me help you with this, making this. I made things difficult for everyone, and I'm not sleeping well with that fact. You understand?"
I think Asada just hugs her.
As you do, she kind of releases a little bit, and she pulls you back, and she has her hands on your shoulders, and she looks at you into the eyes, and she goes, "I'm no fool, and I know that things are going to be different now." She goes, "We're not going to talk about it. Wherever we end up and wherever tomorrow leads us, I just don't want there to be any regrets or anything between us. Are we okay?"
Absolutely. We are more than okay.
She looks over towards Rook. She goes, "There's something else I have to do." And she lingers off, and her hand kind of trails out of your hand. And she walks across, and she's helping stack up some of the stones. And mind you, you guys we're over in like a commons area. Like if you ever went to, like I say, this is a place where a lot of the caravans and shit are parked, and a lot of different people are pitching out and doing things like this. So we're almost in like it's hard to describe. It's kind of like a campground area, but it's within a castle walls, and it's kind of on city stones. But there are places within the city that have greenery and fields and things like that. Not so much fields, but courtyards and shit looking like that. And this is the artistic side of town. You know what I mean? This is where you guys are making these campsites, and there's interesting lanterns hanging on poles. It's kind of an interesting kind of area. And there's not too many people out here, especially after all the commotion from today. There's probably like 10 or 15 different people making up campsites. Nothing like the caravans that you guys have. Yours is very unique. But there's other people that have different tents and different devices and wagons here, but nothing quite like this. And over a pretty big area, probably like a 300 square yard area, like 3 football fields, you know. And as there's some sets of stones that are already put up for fire pits and grates, almost like if you went to a park and there's pavilions and different things that you can kind of go up alongside. There's situations like that here. And as you're standing there, she goes over and grabs some chunks of wood and comes over, and she goes to throw them in, and she walks up to you, Rook, and this is Daphne. And
Daphne's the one that Panther pounced me earlier, right?
yes.
Yeah.
She goes, "I need you to look at me."
Well, it's better that way in case you try to pounce on me again. And then he'll turn to look at her.
She meets your eyes. "I've been thinking about this, and I don't believe that you were sent here to kill us." And it's almost like she's trying to convince herself of it when she's saying it to you.
Certainly glad we're on the same page. I might do a lot of despicable things, and getting innocent people caught up in contracts is not mine.
Well, then I would ask a favor of you. Continue that. he says, or she says to you, Azara has never seen the ugliness of the world the way you have. She looks a little bit closer into your eyes again, and you can get that animalistic aspect of her. Almost like when you look into the eyes of a predator staring right back at you, unblinking. And she says, you and I have seen the ugly side of people. And we've danced in those shadows. She needs people to be there for her when I am not. She looks at you and she takes off a necklace and she bounds it up and she takes your hand and she puts it in there and she squeezes it. When she is ready, and you'll know when that is, you give her this. Not before. When she comes to terms of who and what she is, this may very well save your lives. She looks at you for a long moment intently and she goes, this is a request and also a blessing. Will you accept this?
He'll put his other hand on hers.
Normally I take gold for contracts, but I'll make an exception.
She kind of winces, kind of a half smile, like she's entertained by that to a degree, but she doesn't want to show it too much. And she goes, now help me get this fire started. It's far too cold out here for you all. And she goes over and she starts collecting more wood to build the fire up. Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to say anything in this moment before I inevitably have this group of people on behalf of the Darkwood Stalkers and Vander show up to collect said book? Go ahead, Danny, you go first.
Well, Finn would be waiting for everybody else to settle down, and then he would start, as soon as he thought everybody was out, he would start doing his katas. He'd take off his cloak and actually pull his sword out and start going over katas.
Okay. If any one of you guys see this in the distance, can you explain what that looks like to everyone in case someone wants to interact with you, Danny?
So have you ever seen like the Chinese straight sword?
Looks like a what is it? Is that the like the Tai Chi straight blades?
Yeah, the Tai Chi blade, the crouching tiger, hidden dragon, that kind of, without the fancy flying around. But have you ever actually seen anybody use that?
I have, bud. And is there anything arcane involved in this too, or not?
Occasionally in the kata, you might see the air kind of shimmer around him and stuff as he builds the force up, but doesn't actually do anything with it.
Okay.
You know, going through all the motions of what they do without actually bringing forth anything.
Roll a, just for the hell of it, roll a performance.
Oh, nice. Charisma, so that'd be an 18 total.
Okay. The three of you see a very well-disciplined display of an arcane blade performing their art in the moonlight in their natural environment. It is equal parts graceful and mesmerizing. In the way that he does this is nothing that would be flamboyant. For you, Rook, if you were to jump up and start practicing with your daggers, you would almost find that embarrassing to a degree. That's not how you roll. You know what I mean? With you, Arson, you find that if you were to stand up and start working on some of these things that you've been working on up within the confines of the temple, around other people on your monk abilities, you still would feel a bit awkward. It's almost like the first person that joins up at a dance. You know, at first you're kind of like you feel a little embarrassed for them, but when you catch very quickly the natural art of this, and this is a Lunesti elf being exactly what they're meant to be in their exact element, there is something very peaceful and mesmerizing about it. I'll explain it like that to the three of you. Okay? Azari, it would almost give you a bit of confidence that maybe you're amongst good company in the moments that you see this.
Well, it's funny that plays in a little bit to what I was going to say with Asada. And that's because I think out of all of them right now, she probably trusts Finn the most.
Yeah.
Because she's still like a little wary of Rook because he brought the spiders to her house. And
Yeah,
she
that was
does...
fucked up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll take a minute with him, and then like I don't think she's had many like direct interactions with Arson, so
None of us have.
yeah,
It's
she
good.
well, she kind of see it like almost kind of the I imagine that Arson and Rook kind of are hovering near each other just because they have those shared experiences.
Sure.
You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but like
No, you're all right.
Yeah, probably right.
so I think probably a part of her head is like having Arson almost like as like an extension or companion to Rook. So then like as she's packing up cuz she's very exhausted from a long day, both physically but also what somebody in my life lovingly refers to as emotion hangovers. Um so I think when she sees like Finn doing his thing, there's like a little bit of like okay, there's a little relief there, so then she kind of joins her siblings to like settle and kind of have like a like comfort sort of like interaction with them and a space to rest, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
It perfectly does, yeah. Arson, is there anything you want to add to this scenario, or are you just kind of camping out there trying to catch a few winks?
He's just camping out.
Okay. And oh, quick. As soon as the brightest part of the fire starts to die down within like 30 minutes or so, and it starts to get to where it's blending off a nice amount of heat from the lower parts of it and stuff like that. It's a nice, well-made fire. Hector comes out with a cup of that wine that Vander brought, and he brings you out a mug of it too, Rook. And he hands it over to you, and he looks at you, and he kind of gives a nod, and he doesn't say anything. He just hands you this blue and white kind of glass of wine. He sits there and he looks into the fire. And he's wrapped himself up because they're chilled at night. They're not used to this kind of climate very often. And he says, I cannot help but feel restrained to some degree. With nowhere left to run. There's no more hiding. There's no more fooling. All my tricks and all of my worry are gone in equal measure, and I am left wondering of the future. And he kind of looks at you and he says, I don't know what part I have to play in all this now that I am giving this very sacred piece of my heart over to Vander and the others of the city, but I want you to know that I don't blame you. I've seen the face of what hunts us. And it is not your face. But you must be careful. This has been going on for so long, and now that we are no longer trying to outrun it, and that it has found us, this changes everything I know. I wish I could tell you something that would help you. And he's looking over at Finn too as he walks over to Finn. He hands you a cup as well, Finn, and sits it down as you're performing that and gives you a nod, showing that that wine's there when you're done. And he says, but, and then he gets very serious. He says, the Red Queen knows your fear. If you let her, she will know you better than you will admittingly know yourself. And that is how she will find you. You must resist us. You must be able to avoid her at all costs. And he looks down at that necklace that Daphne put in your hand. And he gives you a knowing nod. And he says, for our own fears can be our own worst enemies. And the Red Queen knows this, and has known this since the age of dreams began. She's always been a part of mine. With that, Finn, as you're doing your kata and you look into the distance, you see two dark figures approaching, walking up from the same direction that Vander did. And as they do, they're still in the distance. What is the group doing? Is anyone alarming arson? Is anyone standing up and taking on a certain position? What is the overall thought process? What's everybody going through? What steps?
As Finn comes to close, he takes out a cloth and wipes his blade down and sheaths it, picks his cloak up in a glass of wine and steps over with the rest of the group. Okay. And motions over. I believe the time has come.
Okay. In the distance, you see what you thought at first was two people, turns out to be three. As they slowly walk up, Rook and Arson, you recognize these people immediately. It is Rainlore, walking with a large lance, as he's using almost like a walking stick, with the long black hair and the very menacing gothic looking kind of cloak with the black leather armor with some iron pads put on it on places. The braids of hair, like I say, the Jason Momoa looking type character seems to be walking along. Over top of him, to the right of him, seems to be that large creature that helped you fight in that battle, that had the dragon-like bone protrusions that came out of the elbows and stuff, and had the feathers for hair. Very odd-looking creature. It seems to be walking up, and it has a different kind of attire on now. It has a very druidic looking cloak that covers its wide shoulders. And the whole top part of this seems to be like some kind of armor-like decorative plate. It seems to have different silvered and bronze icons of like feathers that come down off the edge of it. And you see on both shoulders look like the heads of what look like to be griffins that are made out over the shoulders of both. And then below that is a silver and blue with silver sparkles in it, almost like shimmers, almost like there's some kind of mysticism to it. Hangs down in a curtain of a blue cloak that hangs straight down from this large mantle that he wears, with a low hood that hangs down over top of that, very low. as he walks along. And as he does, you can see the immense shoulders of this being filling up that mantle that he wears. And then finally, the third image that comes into view is you could finally take in and see the horns and the glowing green and golden eyes of what seems to be, her name is Symphona, which looks like a mix between a Dryad. Sorry, am I pronouncing that right? Dryad or Dryad? It's Dryad, D-R, right?
Dryad, yeah.
Yeah. Looks like a mix between a Dryad and a Satyr. And she comes walking up. As the three stop and join you all by the campfire, you're able to look up, and this is the first time I think Azara and Finn have seen these three. Rainlar looks across at Finn and gives a knowing nod. And the girl, the female Dryad being, sticks her hand out and points towards Hector in the distance and says, "Is it here? It will be safe with us. You have our word and our bond." And she gives the two children, Daphne, which is over by the fire, and she looks over, and at this point Damien has come out onto the banister and is drinking too and leaning over the banister of his own caravan, but he's at a distance from the fire, and she gives the two a long look, Azara, as if she knows something that even they don't. And at that moment you realize that you don't even think Damien and Daphne know about this. You don't think they know. And with that, the large one steps forward into the light, and you guys can see a very chiseled jawline, and his eyes kind of pierce out from underneath there, and they have a reflection in the light almost like a cat's eyes would. Not like they're yellow, but they reflect light as if he's a creature of some kind, or a monster of some kind. Azara, you pick up on this immediately. And as he holds out a large lock box and opens it up, he has very muscular, large hands, and he holds them out. And he says, "We'll be sure to keep it safe in here. You have my word." Hector steps inside the caravan with a sigh as he's going to collect the item. Does anybody say anything in this moment of silence here as he's rummaging through and bringing whatever this item is out of the caravan and bringing over to them? No?
I think she actually did meet Rainlord, right?
Yeah, Rainlord's the one that come up here and talked to you at the Leah's.
Yeah. So I think briefly, when Hector steps out, she may give him a nod to be like, "Hello."
Yeah. He kind of nods. And he looks over, and he gives Finn another knowing nod. And he walks past Finn. And he walks over to you, and he says, "Your father's doing the right thing here. I know it's a lot, man." He says, I've been dealing with this for the whole of my life, dealing with all this dark, shadowy shit that always seems to follow people around." And he goes, and I identify, and I see the look of someone else that hasn't fallen them too, right? And he's looking at you. And he says, "But there's nothing that says that we can't fight back. There's nothing that says that. And now, by taking a step forward, you guys are giving yourselves a chance. By taking this, he looks over and he kind of whispers into you. He says, by taking the Tome of Living Dreams. And that's the first time you've ever heard the true name of it. And placing it somewhere safe like that, he says, this stuff is going to cool down and eventually disappear. But you've still got to live with the fact of where you've been so far and what it's done to you. And he goes, we could really use the help of some of your friends. What's that? Go ahead.
Something is coming to mind of he came in and he like whispered that.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna say that maybe she's a little bit at a distance from her siblings, a little bit closer to them from the caravan as he was doing this.
Yes.
And I think she may actually kind of lean in and whisper back something.
Okay.
And I think that's, I am not too sure about my own well-being, but if anything happens to any of my family because of your organization, I will have your head. And then she smiles a bit and then like wanders over to her family.
Okay. In that moment, Rook, you kind of see him kind of straighten up a little bit and look down at her. And he kind of murmurs something in his voice which you're able to catch. He's like, defenseless my ass. And he kind of walks off. Nice. Obviously, someone has had a conversation with him about something at some point. As he walks back over, Hector comes out. And as he does, you hear Symphona start to hum some kind of song. And as she does, there seems to be some kind of wall of some kind of force, or a globe of it that seems to come over and shimmer and protect and encompass the caravans and where she's at as she starts to chant. And the staff that she's carrying begins to illuminate as fireflies begin to swirl around the top of it, and the leaves begin to move around and shift as if the wood of the staff is temporarily begin to come to life. And as it does, you can see different vines of it seem to crawl off from her arm and intertwine with the staff and vice versa. And as she does this, you see certain buds begin to bloom as there are vines around her horns. And things begin to come to life on her as she says these soft words that seem to linger in the air. You definitely recognize this as some kind of protection barricade type spell, Finn, that is being put up. This could be illusionary. This could be force driven. You're not quite sure. This is pretty potent stuff, and it's druidic magic. This isn't something that's conjured and learned from a book. This is using the elements of nature to your advantage here. This is high level. Okay? And as she's doing that, Hector comes out and he looks at the book and he kind of rubs his hand over top of it. And he pats it. And he looks over at Azara. And he says, you know, when we ran, we didn't have a chance to learn all of the secrets of this book. I would have asked for one more thing. But that time is gone, and I have a lot to be thankful for. The kids, Daphne and Damien, are looking very confused and very suspicious, and she looks at you with a little bit of like frustration, like, what the fuck is he talking about? And he looks over to her and he gets a little bit teary-eyed and he kind of tilts his head over. He says, "You're so much like your mother. You all are." And he takes his head and he comes over and he hands the book over. And when he does, the large figure with the mantle closes the book quickly and turns and begins to lock it and stuff. And Rainlord walks back over and puts a hand on Hector's shoulder. And he says, "It's not for nothing. We're going to hold her accountable for what she's put you all through. We're going to do it together. I promise." And with that, he gives a nod and he nods over to Finn and he turns and joins the large figure, the central one. And with that, this barrier seems to dissipate. And Symphona walks up to Hector. And she just nods. She's very regal, very mystic looking kind of creature, like humanoid hybrid kind of thing. And she says, "And now as the time and the force do, through the changing of every season, the healing will begin. You must let it. You must let it happen. Do you understand?" And she says that to Hector, and Hector kind of squeezes his face a little bit, and he kind of nods. And she puts his fingers underneath his chin and lifts his face up. She goes, "Look at me. Nothing ever truly dies. I know you're uncertain and afraid, but..." And she gets a little close. She goes, "I know. It's okay." She smiles again, takes a step back, and the three make off for their own keep, for the realm, and the large hunting lodge type facility that is the Darkwood Stalkers or Darkwood Huntsmen of Hamilsbiar's guild. Okay, so with that, a sharp voice pierces the kind of silence from this, and it's Daphne. And she says, "Father, what was that?" And Hector kind of looks at her and he takes a side and he says, "We'll discuss it tomorrow. Is time for rest." She goes, "No, you're going to tell me what that was. What is all this? What do you know?" And at that point, Damien comes over and he says, "Sister, we must get some..." She goes, "Fucking get your hands off me." And she looks back at him again. And he looks at her, he just smiles. And rubs his thumb across her face again, his last words to her before he turns and is like, "You are so much like your mother." He smiles. And he turns and goes into the caravan. And you can hear him shut the door. And you can hear him lock the door behind him. And he picked up the bottle and took it with him. Okay, so in the wake of that, do you want me to fast forward till the next day, or do you all want to have a conversation, or how do you want to do this? You tell me.
I assume we have to follow them, no?
Seems it would be in our best interest to do so. Especially if we want to do anything about the recent events.
Yeah. Daphne comes over to you, and she looks at you as She goes, I don't know what's going on here. What has happened to him? I have never seen him like this. In all of our lives, I have never seen this. And Damien just kind of comes over and he says, Sister, we must prepare. We don't have any time for this short answers. We'll be leaving in the morning. She goes, leaving where? We have a performance tomorrow. Where is it that we are leaving to? And he looks over at you, and Damien has a knowing nod. He looks at you as if he knows something. Azara. He comes over, and he puts her hand on her shoulder, and he hands her a bag. He goes, we must begin packing. We move. Once again, this has been our life for so long. You know there is no time for conversations or explanations. We move in the mornings. Now it's not the time for this. We need to prepare. And he walks off and he goes, I will see you again. He says that to you, Zara. He goes, and I will take care of him. For our fate is not only up to you all. We still have a part to play in it. You understand?
She hugs him.
Okay. As you do, you hear this really big sigh, and you get a little bit of that monster that you know he can turn into, that large, powerful ram-like creature, and you can kind of feel that strength in him, and you have this reassurance of knowing that at least you know that that's in the two of them, that they have that ability, and that even though they seem to be the victims in this, you would hate to be the one that would test them. Even now, knowing what Hector has, that he's been hiding from you all this time and all the kind of shit he's capable of, and it gives you a bit of reassurance. Okay. With that, does the group choose to follow them back to where they're going? Okay.
I think real quick with Azhara may do a quick drop off of an item as they're leaving.
Okay.
And I think it's either like a piece of candy or like a piece of cloth or something in front of the elven shop for the face sneaker and oh my god, what's his name?
Everon?
Yeah. So
Okay.
like a little drop for the face sneaker and Everon. I believe she knows like he's fully asleep because she saw him closing up everything when she was getting back home, so it's literally just left there to be seen in the morning type thing.
Okay. That works. That's real good. All right. So here's what we can do, guys. It's 9:30. We can go until 10, and I can go ahead and give you the introductions into that place. Or we can stop for now, and you guys can kind of collect and see how you want to react to the rest of this. I'll leave it up to you guys. I know it's been, some of you guys been working extra shit lately and whatnot, so I just want to leave it up to the group. Do you want to press on for a little bit, or you want to go ahead and take off next time from entering in the Darkwood Huntsmen of Hamilsbiar's guild? What do you want to do?
I'm just ready to get the meeting with the guard over with.
With the who?
The meeting
City
with
guard.
Oh, yeah, in the morning. Right, I get it. So, is that a
That
vote? I don't know what that means.
I'm good to go till 10.
Okay. Everybody else good? Okay, awesome. Colby, don't say anything. You're good. We got it. We know you're good. Okay, so.
Majority vote.
I know, right? Yeah, it's all good. So, let me do my famous little roll here. Okay, that's not too shabby. We'll take that. That's bearing a 1. Okay. As you guys work your way through the streets, and it's kind of cold, and you still the warmth of the fire is slowly starting to fade off of you all. You find yourselves going into damn near the second tier of the city. And as you approach the location of this guild, the guild itself is a large, older looking building that has been repurposed by them. It seems to have at least 3 stories to it. and is connected to a tower on one side, and it seems to be on the outskirts of the city, as some of the towers actually reach up above the city walls and can look out into the northern distance. There's huge forests that seem to be of dwarven lands of Argon that lie to the north and the northwest. These towers would be facing on that side of the city and would be facing out in that direction. There's also another large tower, and it seems to be facing to the southeast. Which, do a history check for me. Let me know what you guys get. Collect this. Each one of you tell me what you get.
Eight.
16.
16. 15 or higher, let me know. 16 for Danny. What'd you get, Jeremy?
12.
12. And what did you get, Arson?
16.
Okay, 16. You two would know him, be familiar with, and Danny, of course, you would. You would know that the Silveran lands, or the ruins that are to the south, are what that one tower is facing and directing. Okay? To take an everlong watch on Thornwood is where that's from. Arson, you also recognize that direction, as you are pretty sure that is where you've come from originally. Okay? Or at least in this new era of Arson, you believe that's where you're from. The second age of Arson. As you go to the front, there are no guards present on this side of the city, as normally they walk out and patrol, and there's usually a cluster of 3 of them. We said 2 physical guards of lances and 1 mage type. There is none out along this area. But as you walk to this place and you follow briefly behind the 3 of them, you notice that the large oaken doors in the front of this place open without them even slowing down as much as a step or a pace. And as you look up, you can see people in these towers, and you can see the silhouettes of people in the moonlight. Danny, you could even hear the tension of bowstrings. Okay? And as you guys go into this place, you recognize that the outer wall of it is decorated, and it looks like to have stone trees carved into the door archway of it to seem to be intertwining. Okay? But there's something very strange to it. The art and the look of it seems to have some kind of darkness to it. There's images of death. There are images of skulls. There are images of twisted demons and souls and spirits that seem to be into the tops of the trees as they intertwine over top of the archway, as symbolically to some degree. And at the bottom of these 2 said trees, you also see what look like dryads, depicted and hugging both as they stare upward. It's a very symbolic looking stone archway that leads in. And as the doors open, they actually retract to the inside of the walls. And as these large black iron and thick oaken doors open up, and they are worn down, polished smooth from many people touching them over the ages. Okay? As it opens up, the smell of food and the smell and the sounds of plates clanking and dishes being done and quiet whispers echoing off of the stone walls inside this place automatically becomes just very apparent, as this wall was holding back all of that sound. And even at 3:30 a.m., there was a lot going on inside the Darkwood Hunters Guild here. Okay? As the 3 step inside, Rainlore waits on the inside of the doorway, and he kind of looks you all over. He says, welcome to the guild. I'll give you a tour. And now I've got a place for you all to bed down for the night. I'm sure if you're anywhere as tired as I am, you'll be ready for it. Okay? So, I will describe to you what the interior looks like. You guys ready for this? Okay. In this place, this place is very, very different looking than the other places that you've been in here. It has a whole bunch of elven and ancient dawnscape-like symbolism intertwined with symbolism of the Netherfell. There are all kinds of depictions on the walls of epic heroes and paintings of epic actions, of interactions between people that almost look like undead hunters and undead slayers. There's large slashes of black, intertwined of slashes of white, where you see all this conflict and things, and these abstract type paintings that align some of the walls in this place. Okay? There are at least 15 to 20 large round tables in this place, and you'll notice one thing pops out really, really quickly. On the far wall, there is a large carving of the actual continents of this place, almost like a world map that's made, and it's got to be every bit of like 10 foot tall and 20 foot wide. And on that, you see all kinds of pictures hanging, and you see different symbols and flags that are stuck into peg holes into the stone that hang out and have different banners that hang down off of them. You have to imagine from looking at that, it talks about the placement and location of different members of the guild and what continent they're on and what they're actually doing. It seems to be like a large battle map. Okay? You've never seen anything quite like that anywhere that you've been. Okay? As that happens, on one of the tables in the distance, you would see a half orc with slicked back black hair shaved on the sides, wearing a half mantle of what looks like to be some kind of wyvern scales, with a fur hood over top of one of his shoulders, sitting there solemnly playing some kind of game that involves some kind of pieces that he's fitting together almost like a puzzle, and there seems to be some kind of dice involved, as he's sitting there drinking, playing this game by himself at one of the tables. Okay? You would see in the distance that there seems to be two long hallways that go back into the distance. And in that moment, you see a couple different people come walking out with them. One of them has a map and they're talking quite loudly, and the other two have drinks that they've brought from these deeper sections of this place. They come out and lay down a map on one of the tables. They clank their beers down, and these seem to be like night shift people, man. Like we'll say there's a dwarf and two humans, and the dwarf seems to be a member of this place. He's dressed in dark garb with a long black and brown beard and some wicked looking weaponry. Almost has what looks like to be some kind of crusader's warhammer on his back that has symbolism of angelic wings and shit on it. Weird silvered looking device for someone that looks so dark and mysterious. And he's going over like, that's exactly where you're wanting to start. If you go from here and you go northward, you're going to get into the Lost Wood. And there lies your bounty. And he's going through and explaining to these two humans. He's acting as a guide. Okay? Let me think. Who else? Let me see. Hold on. I'm going to go them and them. Okay, so. No, they will not be there. Okay, let's see if there's someone that maybe you've met before that would be. There's a chance. Jeremy, roll me a 1d20 and tell me if you roll a 17 through 20.
12 again.
Okay. That person would not be there either. There's a certain chance that certain folks will be here. I have some shit drawn up that I thought about earlier today, but none of those folks seem to be here, and it is late, so it makes sense. Rainlord looks at you all and he says, you can take whatever kind of time you need to wind down here in the main floor. Make sure not to touch anything on the large map over there to the side, as that is our way of keeping track of the comings and goings of the other members of the group. He goes, if there's things and whatnot that you need to eat or drink, you can actually go down one of the two hallways. The placards up above will explain to you which one's which. Here are 8 tokens that you guys can use. It's a certain singlet that only is usable through our actual particular guild. I've been allowed to give you these. And he goes over and he goes to hand them out to Finn. He goes, these will take care of you for at least the next 2 or 3 nights for whatever you might need while you're here. He says, in the morning, we'll send someone to wake you, or I'll come myself personally. He goes, and we'll deal with the city and their needs then. But for now, we'll call it a night. You guys have any questions for me before I head out? I've got one more conversation I'm not really looking forward to before I crash, so. Is there anything?
I think we're good.
Okay. With that, you guys, well, welcome. And he walks over and he starts to make his way back through the second long hallway. You have the feeling that there are multiple floors up above this place, as there are the regular pillars in this place that are made of that same dark iron and darkly, almost like charred oak beams that go in this place. And the roof, ceiling of this place is archway, but it's all round archway. It's stone and wooden beams and stuff lining and making archways in this place. You haven't seen the stairs that lead upstairs yet, but you see a couple doors on the very back ends of this place, and the 2 large stone hallways you imagine would lead up to different floors if they needed to. As that happens, okay, yeah. You hear a voice from the distance, and it's that half-orc. And he looks up and he stands up for a minute and he says, "You can join me if you'd like." Holds his hand out and goes like that. Or not, it's your decision. And he sits back down and gets interested in his game again. With that, the dwarven guy is looking over at the 2 of you. Or at the 4 of you, and says, "I haven't heard him ask to have company for some time. He's getting soft on us." He goes, "Fuck off." And he says over to the dwarf, and the 2 kind of share a moment like that, and he goes, just kind of chuckles at him. At that moment, a woman walks out of the back hallway, and it is Winona. Now, those of you that have played in Plan A know who Winona is. She is a short, red-headed dwarf that takes in... How can I explain this? She works over monsters and crafts from them and hones from them the goods that are needed to make all kinds of awesome ornaments and weapons and things like that. And she works for a place called the Heart of the Beast. And Winona is in here, and as she's leaving with empty sacks and a big grin on her face, and she seems to have quite a bit of gold on her, as you can hear it jingle jangle as she comes walking from the back room. And she takes her hand up and she goes like this. She goes, "Loving you guys as always." And she looks up and she goes, "Huh, newcomers. Wasn't that interesting?" Goes, "Well, if you find yourself slaying any creatures," and she looks over and she kind of goes to kind of like jab you in the gut, Finn. And she goes, "And as long as they don't eat you, but I don't think they try to chew on anything as thin as you for very long, just make sure to head over to my place." And she says, "With any goods that we could maybe buy off of you or work out some kind of some dealings." And before you know it, she's got a card out. And she's holding it in front of you, Finn. What are you doing?
He stoops down reaches down to take it.
Okay. As you do, she kind of looks at you and squints one eye, and she kind of looks at you. She goes, you could probably help us out quite a bit. There's a few things there that we can't quite get our hands on because no one's got the stomach for it, or they can't stay up that late to find them. Moonlight creatures or monsters as they were, but it looks to me like maybe you are the one that could maybe bring me these things, huh?
Speaking of
that, but
What's that, Rook?
I was say, speaking of staying up late, as she's talking, Rook is slowly pulling out a chair to sit down at the table with the half orc.
Okay. She goes, remember, heart of the beast, salvage and supply for all your crafting needs.
beast. And you fabricate armor as well from these beasts?
Well, yeah. She kind of says sarcastically. She goes, where do you think I got this from? And she pats on her chest.
The end?
What's that?
So you actually fabricate the armor, not just the raw pieces, or are you just the wholesaler?
She goes, I can do a bit of both. I'm not the best at the whole fabrication part, but if you get supplies from me that need to be used, you'll be saving yourself a lot of worry, trouble, and hassle. So either kill what you want and bring it to me, and I can show you how to perform it properly.
Do you crave a...
Or we can work out other arrangements. I can't go giving you all of my secrets. We've not even done business yet.
And you have a list of creatures you're needing?
Well, that depends. Do you have a list of credentials as to knowing if you could catch said creatures or not? I'm not just going to give you my whole list.
You said specifically creatures that were out at night. Which ones?
She goes, you're persistent, but I like it. Just a moment. And she turns around and she sits down one of the bags, and as she pulls it up, you see a bunch of scroll ends sticking up like this. Okay? And she goes looking through, and she's like, yes, no, and she goes to one, she stops, and she looks at it for a minute, and she kind of blows a lock of that red hair out of her face and kind of wipes it back, and she looks at it again, and she kind of squints, and she looks at you. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not yet. Maybe, And she goes through, and she's looking through a couple more, and then she comes up to one, she's... And she looks over and she looks at Rook. And she looks at Arson and she goes, just maybe the four of you, just maybe could handle this one. She goes, here you go. She pulls up a scroll and she hands it over to you. She goes, and make sure to put cotton in your ears before you go after that one, as it won't be easy. She goes, it's deadly ugly. You might want to kill that just to wipe its face off the earth. I know everybody says everything living has a reason for life and needs to be respected, but when you see this ugly bitch, I think you'll have a change of heart. Do you open it up now while she's still standing there, or do you wait to open it up later?
He'll wait to open it up later, and I'm guessing you want as few holes in it as possible.
She goes, oh, now you're just being cocky. I like that. She walks over to you. She goes, if you're planning on killing that thing, and she looks over at Rook and she looks down at one of his daggers, or those little things, I'm not too much worried about the holes you'll be putting in it. I'd be more worried about the holes that'll be putting in you. And with any luck, maybe I'll see you again.
He smiles. It's over toward the half-orc's table as well.
Okay. Tell me when you choose to open that up and I can explain to you what it is.
Probably on his way over, he would go ahead and look it over a little bit, see what their coin potential is.
Okay, so as you guys make your way over to the table, the half-orc is standing there and he has a long braid of hair. And he almost looks like someone that has PTSD. Like there's something kind of unsettling about this orc, and I would like for you guys to roll a group perception check, and I'll give you an overall evaluation of what this character looks like.
I did pretty well.
Okay.
25 total for me.
Okay. What'd you get, Bella?
11.
Okay. 2 ones. No, I'm joking. That's all good. Kobe, what'd you get, man?
18.
18.
On
Nice.
invest-
dude.
On investigation.
Yeah, perception or investigation.
18.
18. Overall, that's above a 15. The overall vibe that the group gets, I just want to do it that way because I don't want to explain something to one person and have everyone else act like they don't have a fucking clue. This is going to be a paired stuff as you guys study. Like I say, he has that PTSD kind of thing where he's sitting there and he's working on this game, and it's almost like it's soothing him. He's mumbling what appears to be, if that kind of check, the words of different continents and different lands of Ulran. And he's moving pieces together. And on the other side, he has these dice in the middle. And on the far left side, he has these pieces of cards. Looks like they're on pieces of what seem like to be thick parchment. And they're these awesome rough sketch drawings in different hues of browns and reds and blacks and stuff like that. And they seem to be depictions of different creatures and monsters that have descriptions written on them, like a few words. And he's looking at it and he's sizing stuff up, and it goes, yeah, if we take it and we move him over here and we take this, but he belongs, this is his realm, this is where he's from. And he's moving these pieces around, and it seems to be you've never seen this game before. Never seen anything quite like it. You've seen people play something similar to this on the airships before, Rook, but it was never anything this entailed. And they had a system where they were betting money on it to some degree. This seems like maybe what that game was based off of. Okay? Danny, as you... I'll finish with him. He doesn't have overly grotesque features of an orc. He's a half-orc, of course. He's actually quite handsome, but brooding. His skin is dark tanned with a hue of that green, but it's not complete. He seems to be... His overall demeanor makes him look like he's from a different time. He almost seems like he's out of his element here. And the way he wears those wyvern scales and the way he has that large, some kind of furred creature hood on his back, and you see it to his side, Jeremy, you'd recognize he has 2 sabers that look very similar to sabers like you would carry. But they seem to be a little bit longer, and he keeps them at his side and on him even when he's sitting in this chair. Okay? It's interesting, and he looks up at you, Azara. And which form are you in now? Are you in the regular Azara where you look like a female dancer from Demir? Okay. He looks up at you and he says, show me where you're from. And he holds his hands out. I mean, he looks down to the table in front of him, and you can see the different pieces of these stone plates or puzzle pieces of a map. And each piece seems to be the shape of a continent. And he's asking you to show him where you would be from if you were one of these continents. Do you do that, or do you converse, or what do you do?
I think she goes, I believe I'm from here. And then points at, like, the Demir area.
Okay. He looks at that and he goes, Demir. I haven't gotten as far as Demir yet. I'm still working around the Tordain area and learning about the Stone Crown in Iversden. I've not made it that far from Demir. Tell me, what exactly do the people of Demir fear the most as far as the creatures and the wildlife that roam and run around? What would a hunter go there to seek? If you want to roll a history check, I can give you some ideas, or you can come up with something. It's up to you.
I rolled an 9.
A 9. It's been a long time since you've been there. But you do remember tale of these large sand rays that people would walk out into the desert and they would think that the sands were shifting from a windstorm, but they actually were walking upon the fins of what seemed to be these large manta ray looking creatures that seemed to be at least like 70, 80 foot big that were laying just underneath the surface and would come alive. And it was almost, you always were told that they were the magic carpets of giants, which was kind of a legendary story. And you've always kind of thought that maybe that's where the legend of magic carpets came from. You know, people flying around on these things, but that's something, and you know of those creatures. And those were just called sand rays.
I think she goes, my advice is if you go, is to watch where you step when you're navigating the sand. I'll tell you that much, and she may kind of draw a quick picture of it and leave it with him.
That's awesome. As you do, I want to roll here. Roll a performance. I want to see how well you draw it.
Let's see. You said performance?
Sure, unless you can come up with something else.
No, I have the extra skill with performance. I'm fine with that.
Right on.
Let's see. Charisma is +3. I rolled an 11, and then +2.
16?
16, yeah.
Okay. With that, he goes through the deck. And by God, there's a picture of one of those in there. And as he flips through the card and he puts together and stuff, he flips over to that and he's like, oh. He holds it up and he says, so many things have changed. Amazing. That would be the true test of a warrior. Indeed, I will add this to the list. He takes it and he slaps it down and he puts it on that map section and puts that stone continent on top of it as to hold it down like a paperweight. Okay. At that point, food comes out to the table. Okay. Someone that seems to be a... Now, I won't do that. An Auroran elf seems to come out from the distance, a younger one. Okay. And they are bringing out a plate of food, and they seem to have on the black cloak of this group and following, as well as this seems to be some kind of person in training or a squire of some kind of type. And they are bringing out a plate of food, and they lay it down on there, and it seems to be roast beef, potatoes, a half heel of bread, and mead that doesn't seem to be too cold, but it's in these large iron mugs. And he brings out on a plate and sits down. The character looks up and goes, we're going to need more of that for who are you all?
Name's Rook.
Rook. Looks
This
at
is
you,
Arson.
Arson.
The name's Arson.
Looks across, looks over at Azara.
My name is Asara. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance.
It's good to meet you as well. And you? He looks over at Danny's character, which is not there right now. So he throws out a couple of those tokens that Rainlore handed you guys. And that young elven boy seems to pick him up. He says, right away, I'll have that stuff coming out to you just shortly. And after this, the kitchen will be closed for the rest of the night. And he doesn't even look up at him. And he goes, that'll be fine. And he continues with what he's doing. With that, it's 10:03. So we're going to call it quits because I do have some shit I've got to do. But we'll wait for Dave to come back. Hopefully he comes back here in just a minute and we can kind of wrap this up on a note. But think about, we're going to give you guys sleeping arrangements for the night. We may start the first section of next week's game. Just getting through the night. Wake up in the morning, try to figure out plans. Or you can dig deeper into this game. I actually have a whole thing written for it. It is actually a playable game by the people, if you guys choose to do it. And there's also stuff and if you want to talk to the dwarf that's being the guide for the people on the other side. Danny also has this scroll for this creature that needs to be hunted in supposed nighttime. So there's a couple different things already just from first walking in here. Okay? So with that, does anyone have anything before we shut this down for this afternoon? And I'm going to take everyone's silence as no, correct? Oh, we are ending for the night, Danny. Everyone voted and said they were sick of you.
Oh, okay, cool.
I know, right? I know. I knew you wouldn't be hurt. You're made of tougher stuff than that, buddy. Okay. And as always, Brian Kynes, thanking you guys again for hanging out with us here on this Sunday afternoon, and we'll hopefully see you next weekend. Later on.